Well, the thing that I will always remember about Ron is his smile. When Ron smiled, his whole face lit up, and there was a twinkle in his eye. For the last few days, I have been racking my brain trying to remember a time when I saw Ron when he wasn't smiling. I don't think I ever saw him without a smile on his face. I'm sure there were times when he wasn't smiling, especially around the time when his brother was in the hospital. Yet even as I think about the times when we met in the hospital as we walked up to Al's room together, what sticks in my memory is the smile on Ron's face. In the tough moments of life, the corners of his mouth may not have been turned up in a traditional smile. But there was still something about his face, his eyes, his manner that said he was smiling. Do you know what I mean about that? Did you experience that? As I've talked with Ron's family and friends over this last week, I've heard people talk about Ron, and the comment that I've always heard is he was such a happy guy. Yet I'm not sure if happy is the right word to describe how Ron was or who he was. Sure, he was happy, but I'm willing to bet that there were times when Ron wasn't happy. If I were to quiz Joyce, she might tell me about times when maybe he wasn't always the happiest. If I were to get Randy and Brian to tell me stories about them as boys, I'm sure that they could come up with some stories when Dad wasn't always happy with them, right? So I don't think happy is the right word to describe who Ron was, because happiness comes and goes. Happiness can be intense one moment and fleeting the next. Ron, though, was consistent. Through the ups and downs, there was something different about him. I think a better way to describe Ron is joy-filled. You see, while happiness may be fleeting, joyfulness lasts. You can be joyful in any situation. I think that Ron was joyful. Joyfulness caused Ron to smile. Joyfulness caused Ron's eyes to sparkle. I think what we saw every day on Ron's face was true joy. But how did he get to be like that? And even more importantly, how can we carry on Ron's legacy of joyfulness after today? Because I think that's what the world really needs right now, is more joyful people, more people like Ron. Wouldn't you agree? So my question today is, how can we be joy-filled people just like Ron was? And as I thought about this question this week and spent time going over the materials for today, I realized that Ron's secret to a joy-filled life, the secret to why there was always a smile on his face, is found in one of the passages that Barry read a little earlier. It's in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. Let me read it for you again. It says this: "You love him even though you have never seen him. Though you do not see him now, you trust him and you rejoice with a glorious, inexpressible joy. The rewards for trusting him will be the salvation of your soul." You rejoice with a glorious, inexpressible joy. Inexpressible joy. This joy that is deep down, that is welling up within you, that stays throughout anything, that you can't even get into words, and yet it comes out in how you act. Doesn't this describe how Ron was? That there was a joy deep down that was inexpressible, that came out in the sparkle in his eye, in the cheeriness of his face, in the smile that he had. This is what Peter, the author who wrote this, is talking about. And I think this is how Ron discovered to be joyful in all situations. And there's three words that I want to give to you today that come right out of here from this passage that in 1 Peter. Three words. Peter starts off and he says, "You love him even though you don't know him." And one thing that I know about Ron is that in this life, he never saw Jesus. He never saw Jesus, and yet I know this about Ron as well, is that he loved Jesus. He loved Jesus with all of his heart. He was passionately devoted to Jesus. You heard Barry read from a book that he would read regularly, and this is how you express your love for someone, right? You spend time with them, and Ron would spend time in God's Word. He would read that Jesus Calling book. He would read the scriptures that go along with it because he loved Jesus. But even his actions demonstrated how much he loved Jesus. In all the years that I've been here at Living Hope, Ron volunteered in our summer kids camp. Him and his brother Al would come, And they would count the money that the kids would bring as an offering. We would do a project that would raise funds for something. And the kids would bring in all of their coins, right? And their pennies, because that was when when we had pennies, right? And they would bring them all in, and Al and Ron would count them. And we have proof of that because we have all of these Able Plumbing calculators sitting around the office because he would bring us one every single year. And Ron loved Jesus, and he was committed to making our kids' camp every year a success. And hundreds, if not thousands, of kids have come to Christ over the years through the kids' camps of Living Hope. And Ron was part of that, because when you love someone, you can't help but share them with everybody else. And this was Ron's way of doing that. Peter goes on. So the first way to experience inexpressible love or inexpressible joy is to love. If you want to experience the joy that Ron had, you need to love Jesus. Because when we love someone, right, it just fills us with great joy. I was sitting with the family last Sunday, and they were talking about Ron. And you know what? You would think there might be tears, right? But there was laughter. This was just, like, I'm sure you guys have had lots of laughter this week, right? As you've told stories about Ron. Because you love him so much, and it wells up in joy. And this is what Peter is saying. As you love Jesus, it will well up in joy, an inexpressible joy that will change who you are. And Peter goes on and he says this. He says, though you do not see him now, you trust him, and you rejoice with a glorious, inexpressible joy. So love leads to inexpressible joy. Trust leads to inexpressible joy. And Ron trusted Jesus. Even though he couldn't see him, he trusted Jesus. And he trusted this, the cross. He trusted that at the cross, that he had laid down all the things that he was ashamed of, everything that he regretted in life, that he laid them down and he found forgiveness. And you know what? When you find forgiveness for the things that you are ashamed of in life, the things that you regret doing, when you find forgiveness in Jesus, when you trust that he says that all is forgiven, then you can't help but be joyful. Because there's nothing you feel guilty about. Because Christ has forgiven everything. And it all comes from trusting Jesus. And Ron trusted Jesus with all of his heart. And he walked around with joy because he knew that his life was forever changed by what Jesus did on the cross when he died for your sins and for mine. And he rose again on the third day to show us that there is life. There is something after that. And this is what Peter says next. He says the reward for trusting him will be the salvation of your souls. So the first word, if you want to experience inexpressible joy, it's love. The second word is trust. And the third word is hope. Hope. Hope that there is something more than just this life. Hope that there is something beyond this. And Ron had incredible hope. You know how I know this? It's because in my pocket here I have something of Ron's. This is a copy of 3 hand-page written notes. And they're on Able Plumbing and Heating estimating sheets. He really liked that company. And I know how he was, that if the estimate wasn't followed the way that he specified, he would come back and have words with the person who did the installation. So I'm trying to follow these as close as I can, because I don't want to have Ron cornering me in heaven someday and saying, Kirk, you missed this. I know that Ron was filled with hope because he took time, and this is dated 2013. He took time in 2013 to sit down and write out what today should look like, even to the finest detail to say we are having assorted sandwiches, coffee, and pop after this, okay? Seriously, it's in here. The songs that we sang are all songs of trust and of hope, that there is something more to this life than just the here and now. And he chose every single one of them. And he even said, tell the congregation they are to sing with enthusiasm. Seriously. Why? Because he had such a hope In Jesus, who died on the cross and on the third day was risen from the dead, to show us that there is life, life eternal. And Ron was not scared of death because he planned this all out. He wasn't scared to look it in the eye and say, my Jesus will raise me from the dead. And this is the hope that Ron had. And when you have trust, and when you have love, and when you have a hope that is like this, you cannot help but have inexpressible joy inside of you, like Ron did. And so what do we do with this? What do we do with this message from 1 Peter that speaks about inexpressible joy? Well, friends, 3 words: love, trust, hope. And maybe you've never been to church, or maybe you haven't been to church for a long time, and the idea of loving or trusting, this is not something you're comfortable with. What about hope? What about hoping that Ron is with Al today, that Ron is with Jesus? What about hoping that there is more to life than just the here and now? What about hoping that maybe God has something more? What if you chose to hope today and just discovered, whether I'm telling the truth or not, that joy will well up inside of you because of the hope that is found in Jesus Christ, in Ron's hope? Or maybe you've been coming to church for a while. Maybe it's time to trust. Maybe it's time to really become a passionately devoted lover of Jesus and discover this joy inside of you. I don't know what it is. Whenever I go to a funeral, I like to look at the life of the person that we're celebrating and say, what is it that I can learn from his life or her life? What is it that I can take away so that I will be different tomorrow than how I am today? And from Ron's life, I'm going to take this joy to love, trust, and hope. Because I want to be a more joyful person, just like your dad, just like your husband was. Because I will always remember his smile. What if we were all like that? What if we were all joyful like Ron? What a difference this would make in the world, wouldn't it? Wouldn't this be fantastic to experience? We can do this as we love, trust, and hope today. Doug's going to come and lead us in our final song of today. And we are going to go next door into our fellowship room, our gym, and we are going to celebrate Ron's life by telling stories, by giving people hugs, by laughing together, by crying together. And this is all good things. I hope you'll join us for that reception. During this song, the family and I are going to exit during the second verse. And we hope you'll join us over in the gym. You can either go out the main door here and take a right? Or you can go out this door right over here and just go straight on into the gym. So we hope you'll come and join us in that. Doug, come and lead us.
One more song to sing with enthusiasm.
I'm ready.
Not quite as lively as the other songs, but it's a song that expresses the worship that God had given to Ron's heart. How great thou art. O Lord my God, how great thou art. And let's